Hello and welcome. Today we're diving deep, and I mean really deep, into the work of a thinker named Erich Fromm. And what's incredible about Fromm is that even though he was writing decades ago, his ideas feel like they were written for us, right now, in this very moment. This isn't just some dusty academic philosophy. No, this is more like a diagnosis of our modern lives. Fromm looked at the world and saw that underneath all the noise, the jobs, the social media feeds, the endless cycle of buying things, there's a huge battle being fought. It's this quiet, almost invisible war. And it's not happening between countries or political parties. It's happening inside of you, inside of me, inside every single one of us. He saw it as a struggle for our very soul, a constant push and pull between two powerful forces. One force pulls us toward life, toward growth, creativity, and freedom. And the other pulls us toward a kind of numbness, toward control, conformity, and what he called a kind of living death. Now, if you've ever felt that strange sense of emptiness, even when you have everything society tells you should make you happy, or if you've ever felt totally powerless, like you're just a tiny gear in a giant impersonal machine, then Fromm is speaking your language. He gives a name to that anxiety, that feeling of being disconnected. But he does more than just diagnose the problem. He gives us the tools to see this internal battle for what it is, to understand our part in it, and most importantly, to actually choose which side we're on. So this is way more than just learning about a philosopher. It's about learning the map to our own inner world.
So here's how we're going to break it all down. First up, we'll get right to the heart of it with a section called A Freak of Nature. This is Fromm's starting point for everything, the real root of why we struggle as human beings. Then we'll look at the two paths. This is the fundamental choice he says we all face, a choice between something he calls biophilia and its opposite, necrophilia. Sounds intense, right? It is. After that, we're going to tackle the lie of obedience. This is where Fromm flips one of our most basic virtues on its head and really makes us ask who we're actually listening to. From there, we'll zoom out and see how this all plays out in the real world with the consumer society and how it creates a very specific kind of person. That leads us right to the core of his message, the courage to say no. This is all about that one crucial act that allows us to become free. And to wrap it all up, we'll bring it home with your humanistic conscience, turning the spotlight back on us and what all of this means in our crazy digital world.
So let's just sit with this question for a moment. Fromm isn't just being poetic here. He means it 100% literally. He's saying that our entire life, everything we think and do and feel, is basically our answer to a single massive problem that's baked into our DNA as humans. We're all soldiers in this inner war, whether we realize it or not. Every choice, big or small, is a move on the battlefield. Think about your job. Did you choose it because it brings you alive or because it offers safety and predictability? Think about how you are in relationships. Do you try to connect with someone in a way that helps you both grow? Or is it more about finding security, maybe even controlling them or being controlled? What about the stuff you buy, the content you watch? Is it feeding a real interest or is it just a way to numb that feeling of inner emptiness? Every single one of these choices, for Fromm, is a tactical decision in the war for your own self, and the stakes, they couldn't be higher. What's on the line is our ability to feel genuine freedom, to be creative, to experience real joy. So just understanding that this fight is happening, that it's real and it's happening right now, that's the first step toward actually taking control and fighting for the person you know you could be.
Okay, so where does this epic internal struggle even come from? What's the problem we're all trying so desperately to solve? To get it, we have to start where Fromm starts, with what he calls the human condition. And he uses this really provocative phrase to describe us. He says that humanity is a freak of nature. Now that sounds like an insult, but it's not. It's a description of our unique, weird, and paradoxical place in the universe. And it's this freakishness, this fundamental contradiction in our existence, that gives rise to both our deepest fears and our greatest accomplishments. It's not a flaw, it's not a mistake, it's just the central challenge of being human. And our entire lives are really just one long attempt to find an answer to it.
To really get what he means by freak of nature, we have to start here. We are torn from the natural world. Think about an animal, like a fox or a bird. It lives in this perfect, seamless harmony with its environment. Its instincts are its everything. They guide it perfectly. It doesn't have sleepless nights wondering, what's my purpose? It doesn't have an existential crisis. It just is. It is a part of nature woven into the fabric of life. But us, humans, through our long, slow evolution, something incredible and terrifying happened. We developed consciousness, we developed self-awareness, and in that moment, we were ejected from that biological Garden of Eden. We're still in the natural world, of course. We need its air, its water, its food, but we are no longer of it. We stand apart. We look at it. We analyze it. We change it. We feel like strangers in our own home. And this separation, Fromm says, is the original wound. It creates this deep sense of existential homelessness that we carry around our whole lives, that feeling that we don't quite belong.
Now, being separate from nature might be one thing, but what makes our situation so intense, so uniquely human, is that we know we're separate. We are gifted with this incredible tool set: reason, imagination, self-awareness. It's an amazing gift, right? It lets us write poetry, compose music, figure out the laws of physics. But it's also a curse, because that same awareness forces us to look in the mirror and confront our own weird situation. We know we are alone in a vast, silent universe. We feel our own powerlessness against things like disease, natural disasters, or just the sweep of history. And the biggest one, the one that haunts us all, we are the only creatures we know of who have to walk through every single day of our lives with the absolute, certain knowledge that our time is limited, that one day we will die. No other animal carries that burden. That constant, low-level hum of anxiety about our own mortality is a uniquely human experience, and it's a direct result of being aware of our separation.
So you take these two things together, the fact that we're separate from nature and the fact that we're painfully aware of it, and you get what Fromm calls a prison of loneliness. He argues that this isn't just a sad feeling. It is an unbearable state of being. You can have all the food you want, a safe place to live, but if you are totally psychically isolated, totally cut off from other people and from a sense of meaning, it's a kind of madness. In fact, he suggests that's a pretty good definition of mental illness, someone who has totally lost the ability to connect, who has locked himself away in that inner prison. This state of unbearable loneliness creates the single most powerful drive in a human being, the desperate, all-consuming need to escape that prison. We have to find new connections. We have to build new ties to the world, to other people, to ideas, to replace the instinctual ties to nature that we lost forever. And our whole life, Fromm says, is basically a project dedicated to solving this one problem. How do I escape the prison of my own loneliness? So, here we are, we're all stuck with this core problem of existence. We're these lonely, self-aware creatures desperately trying to find a way to belong again. So how do we do it? How do we solve the problem? Well, according to Fromm, there are really only two answers. Humanity has come up with two completely different, totally opposite ways to escape that prison of loneliness. And he's not talking about a small choice, like picking a hobby. No, this is the choice. This is the fundamental moral psychological fork in the road that every single person and every single society has to face. Ultimately, our lives are defined by which of these two paths we choose to walk down.
This right here lays out the two great strategies for how to live. On one side, you have the life-affirming path. This is the path of growth. On this path, you solve your loneliness through love. And for Fromm, love isn't a passive feeling, it's an active practice. It's connecting with someone else while fiercely protecting both of your individual selves. It's two people becoming one but remaining two. You try to overcome your smallness, your mortality through creation. And that doesn't just mean being an artist, it means creating anything, a business, a family, a garden, a new idea. You find your sense of security, your roots, and your own individuality by becoming more and more yourself. And you navigate the world using reason, by looking at reality clear-eyed. Now, on the other side, you have the dark reflection of all that, the life-denying path. This is the path of control. Here, you solve loneliness not with love, but with domination or submission. You try to fuse with another person by either controlling them completely or by letting them control you. Either way, you lose yourself. You find that feeling of transcendence not in making something new, but in the awful thrill of destruction. And you find your identity not by being yourself, but through conformity and idolatry, by melting into a crowd, a nation, a mob, or by worshiping a person, a state, or even a brand. And you find your way not with reason, but through irrationality, by surrendering your mind to dogma.
And Fromm gave these two paths these really unforgettable names. He called the life-affirming path biophilia. It literally means the love of life. This is the drive in all of us that is drawn to growth, to vitality, to everything that is alive and dynamic. It's the joy you feel watching a puppy play, or the satisfaction you get from helping a plant grow, or seeing a friend succeed. It's the impulse to nurture. The other path, the life-denying one, he called necrophilia, which means the love of the dead. Now, let's be super clear. He's not talking about a literal sexual attraction to dead bodies. He's using it as a psychological term for an attraction to everything that is dead, rigid, mechanical, and orderly. It's the passion to take something that is alive, messy, and unpredictable and turn it into something dead, neat, and controllable. It's the impulse to dissect, to categorize, to systematize, to destroy. Because if you feel you can't create life, Fromm argues, the only other way to feel powerful is to take it away. So for Fromm, this is the ultimate drama of the human condition. Biophilia versus necrophilia, playing out inside each of us every single day.
Okay, so this battle between the love of life and the love of death, that can all feel a little abstract, a little philosophical. So where does it get real? Where can we actually see it happening in our daily lives? Fromm says the front line of this battle is our relationship with authority. It's all about the act of obedience. I mean, think about it. For our entire lives, we're taught that being obedient is good and being disobedient is bad. It's one of the first lessons we learn. Parents want it from kids, teachers from students, bosses from workers, governments from citizens. It seems like the glue that holds society together. But Fromm comes along and says, wait a minute, let's look closer. He takes this idea that we all take for granted and he blows it wide open. He forces us to ask, who are we obeying? And maybe even more important, why are we obeying them?
And Fromm does this by totally reframing our history. He argues that human history doesn't start with obedience. It starts with an act of disobedience. Just look at the foundational myths of Western culture. Take Adam and Eve. What's the story? They disobeyed God. They ate the apple from the tree of knowledge. And that act of disobedience is what kicks them out of the mindless, animal-like paradise of Eden. It's what opens their eyes, makes them self-aware, and forces them to become moral-thinking individuals. Their story, our story, begins with saying no. Or think of the Greek myth of Prometheus. He disobeys the gods, steals their fire, and gives it to humanity. That single act of defiance is what gives us the power to build civilization, to create technology, to move forward. But then Fromm throws in this really chilling warning for us today. He says, while disobedience might have started human history, it's blind, unquestioning obedience that could very well end it. He was thinking of the Cold War, of millions of soldiers and technicians on both sides trained to follow orders without question, even if that order was to push the button and start a nuclear war that would end everything.
So this is the absolute key to understanding Fromm's point about obedience. When people say, you should always obey your conscience, Fromm would ask, okay, but which conscience? He says we have two of them, and they are in total opposition. First, there's what he calls the authoritarian conscience. Think of this as the voice of your parents, or your teachers, or your boss, or the government, or what people think, a voice that you've swallowed whole and now lives inside your head. It operates on one principle, fear. It's motivated by the fear of being punished and the desire to be rewarded. For this conscience, good is whatever pleases the authority and bad is whatever displeases it. That's it. And every time you listen to this voice, Fromm says you become a little weaker, a little more dependent on outside approval. But then there's the other voice, the humanistic conscience. This is your voice. It's the inner whisper of your own humanity. It has nothing to do with outside rewards or punishments. It's your own gut reaction to what feels life-affirming versus what feels life-denying. It's that feeling of rightness you get when you see an act of genuine kindness, and that feeling of wrongness you get when you see cruelty. Its only command is to be true to yourself, to affirm life. Good is what helps things grow. Bad is what crushes them. And listening to this voice, Fromm says, makes you stronger and more fully yourself. The whole ethical struggle of life is learning how to turn down the volume on that loud, bossy, authoritarian voice so you can finally hear the quiet whisper of your own humanity.
So that brings us right to our own world. Fromm was warning way back in the mid-20th century that modern society is basically a giant engine designed to push us down that life-denying path of obedience and conformity. It does this by shaping us into a very specific kind of person, a personality type that fits perfectly into the needs of the economic system. He called this person the organization man, someone who's been sanded down, all rough edges removed, so they can fit smoothly and without any friction into the massive gears of corporations and governments. This quote right here, it just perfectly nails his entire critique of modern life. Let's just pull it apart for a second. The first half, we produce things that act like people. I mean, look around. Our phones talk to us. They have names like Siri and Alexa. Our social media feeds are designed to act like friends who know exactly what we want to see. We give human qualities to our technology. And then the second half, the really brutal part, and people that act like things. In this same system, human beings are treated more and more like objects. We're not people, we're human resources. We're not citizens, we're data points. Our value is measured by our productivity, by our efficiency, by how much we consume. All that amazing, messy, creative life force inside of us gets drained out and projected onto the very objects we make. And that, for Fromm, is the absolute definition of alienation. We become strangers to ourselves, bowing down to the things we created.
Fromm had a name for this modern person, Homo consumens, or consuming man. And if we're being honest, these traits here probably sound a little familiar. His primary goal isn't to be more wise, more loving, more creative. It's just to have more. More stuff, more experiences, more followers. He's driven to consume constantly, not because he really needs or wants anything, but because it's a way to temporarily fill that inner void, that loneliness and anxiety we talked about earlier. He lives in the state of constant, low-grade boredom, and he mistakes the endless stream of entertainment and stimulation for actual, genuine happiness. And here's the paradox. Even though he's surrounded by more wealth and technology than any human in history, he feels completely powerless over his own life. His tastes, his desires, they're not even his own. They're manufactured and fed to him by industries that need him to keep wanting things. And Fromm uses this unforgettable image. He calls him the eternal suckling, a person whose mouth is just always open, passively waiting to take in whatever the system gives him, whether it's fast food, streaming content, political opinions, or even relationships. Life becomes one big thing to be consumed.
Okay. So if our whole society is basically a machine designed to turn us into these passive, obedient consumers, how in the world do we fight back? How do we choose the path of life, the path of biophilia, when there's this giant, brightly lit superhighway leading straight to the other path? For Fromm, the answer, the turning point, isn't some huge political revolution. It's a deeply personal act, an act of profound courage.
According to Fromm, this is how you become a free person. It's a three-step process. Step one, and this is probably the hardest, is you have to listen. You have to deliberately tune out all the noise, the demands of your boss, the pressure from social media, the fear of what other people will think, and you have to learn to hear that very quiet, very subtle voice inside you, that humanistic conscience, that gut feeling that tells you what makes you feel more alive and what makes you feel dead inside. Step two, you have to question. You have to find the courage to doubt the authorities that run our lives, especially the ones that don't make any sense. This isn't about being a cynic who doubts everything. It's about having the strength to say, wait a minute, does this actually make sense? Is this actually good? And then finally, after you've listened and you've questioned, you have to act. And the ultimate act of freedom is having the ability to say no. It's saying no to the pressure to conform, no to being treated like a thing, no to the path of control and destruction. But, and this is so important, this no isn't about just being negative. It only has power because it's actually in service of a much bigger yes. You're saying yes to your own humanity, yes to life, yes to your own freedom.
And this brings Fromm's ideas, which he wrote down more than 50 years ago, crashing right into our lives today. The battle he described, that fight between the love of life and the love of death, between freedom and control, that hasn't changed one bit. But the battlefield? Oh, the battlefield looks completely different now. The forces that push us to obey and conform have gotten so much smarter. They're more subtle, more sophisticated, and way more seductive than the old-school authorities Fromm was talking about. So this last part is about turning that powerful Frommian lens right back on ourselves here in the digital age. I love this quote because it's so sharp. It's such a perfect guide for how to think about this. Let's just break it down. A person who cannot disobey is a slave. That part's pretty straightforward. If you are psychologically unable to say no to whatever authority is in front of you, then you're not really free. You're just a tool being used for someone else's purpose. But the second part is even more interesting. A person who can only disobey is a rebel. You know this person. This is the person who says no to everything, but they're doing it out of anger, out of resentment. They define themselves only by what they're against. But a true revolutionary, in Fromm's eyes, is completely different. A revolutionary disobeys not because they hate what's in front of them, but because they love something more. They say no to a life-denying authority because they are saying a huge yes to their own inner authority, to their principles, to their humanistic conscience, to their vision of a better, more human way of living. Their no isn't about tearing down, it's about building up.
And this right here is the final, mind-bending question Fromm's work leaves us with. And it's a question that's 1,000 times more urgent today than it was when he wrote it. He saw a new kind of authority coming over the horizon, one that was anonymous, one that wouldn't rule with threats and punishment, but with gentle persuasion and manipulation. Well, today, that authority is here. It's called the algorithm. The algorithm doesn't order you to do anything. It just recommends. It recommends the next video to watch, the next product to buy, the next person to connect with, the next piece of news to read. It doesn't punish you. It just nudges you, gently, invisibly, toward what it is calculated to be the optimal path. It's an authority that is designed to be pleasant. It feels less like a dictator and more like a super helpful personal assistant who knows you better than you know yourself. So the ultimate modern challenge is right there in that question. How do you disobey an authority that doesn't feel like an authority at all? What does it even mean to say no when the prison is this comfortable, this personalized, and when the warden is so friendly and helpful? Figuring that out for ourselves might just be the most important battle we'll ever fight.